Alright, this is an older story. It was uploaded to the channel right when I had 1,000 subscribers. Now I am at 50,000 subscribers. I wonder how many of my OGs remember this story. This story came to me at the end of 2020. It went crazy, but I took it down because other channels were stealing it. They were downloading the entire video and re-uploading it to their channel without making any edits. I had over 1,000 videos on the channel, and almost all of them were being stolen. I even had a guy whose girlfriend was an attorney. He even sent me a few, and they were also being taken. This story was not on any other channel in this niche. My wife of 31 years, who's a flight attendant, has cheated with over 44 men. This is my first time here. Never ever thought I would be doing this. Just found out that my wife of 31 years, who's a flight attendant, has cheated on me with over 44 men. I would have never known if the detective didn't show up at my door. How can you live with yourself after doing this to someone? To start off, I met my wife back in college. I was studying to be an engineer. She was already a flight attendant, but more so in the training aspect. She acquired that position right out of college. She would travel to many places within the US and abroad. She was on a business trip, and I always supported her. We developed a routine every time she would be gone for extended periods. She would call me when she landed, and we would set times to chat with each other through all the time zones. After about 5 years of being married, the routine continued, and as strong as ever, nothing out of the ordinary, like usual. And then she was gone for a week. I called her at the time we set, and it went to voicemail. You never think that your wife would cheat on you, but here I am, sitting in my home alone, and after 31 years of marriage, wondering if she saw another man or not. I tried calling her again 3 days later when she landed from this trip. Still no answer. This is where our routine changed, because now, instead of me picking up the phone every day, I had to wait until she contacted me first. She finally called late one night and said, "I'm sorry for not calling and answering." We all got off the plane, went for a drink, and got a bite to eat. When I returned to my room, I just crashed for the next few days. She says we were taking in the tourist attractions a little before we had to go to our next destination. I said, I understand. I told her to have fun and to call me when she gets to her next destination. She said, I will the next day. I was lying on the bed watching some TV when my phone rang. It was her this time. We talked for about 15 minutes before getting off the line. She says, we all went out to a bar later that night where there were a lot of drinking games going on to get you drunk faster. The first one involved being in an ice-cold pool while people threw meat at us for boats for target practice. The crew is always looking for ways to have fun around the places we go, because as soon as you stop doing things, your mind starts wondering what else could be so much more interesting than this job. The next day, she called me after the flight was landing and said, I am in an airport hotel near here. I will call you when I get settled into my room. She calls me, we chat for about an hour, and we get off the phone. The next day, I went to work as usual, came home and waited for my wife to call me. A little later, she does. We chat. I asked her how she's doing. She said she has been hanging out with the other flight attendants, pilot and co-pilot. We get off the phone. Then there is a knock at the door. I ask, who is it? He announces himself as Detective Randall. I am perplexed as to why he's here. I opened the door. He held up his business card and badge. He asked if he could come in and chat for a few minutes. I said, sure, come in. He then proceeded to tell me that he was investigating a homicide. I said, what? Why are you at my place talking to me about a homicide? He then tells me that the victim knew my wife. They uncovered her contact information through the investigation through phone records. While he is telling me this, I am in total shock. He didn't ask me where my wife was. I told him that she is a flight attendant and won't be back until the following week. He then asked me, did I know the victim? I told him I had never heard of him. I then asked him to tell me more about the homicide. He tells me that it was a brutal murder. My wife never mentioned anything like this to me beforehand. He gets up from his seat. He apologizes for coming in so late, but says he will contact her next week when she returns from her trip. I didn't call my wife when the detective left because I wanted to talk to her in person. Fast forward to the day she gets back. She calls and says she has landed. I told her I would be there to pick her up. I get to the airport and I am waiting for her by baggage claim. When she comes out of the security area, she smiles and greets me with a hug and a kiss. I grab her bags and we walk to the car. I ask her, did she have any fun at all? The places she visited with the crew? She said, yes, I had a wonderful time. We get home. I get her bags and take them into the house. When we are inside, I walk up to her and hand her the detective's business card and ask her why was the detective at our home asking about a man who was killed. That knew you. She looks at the card, then looks at me. She said she had no idea what I was talking about. I told her that he knew you from the phone records that the detective uncovered. I asked, are you friends on Facebook or something? She said no and walked away to go upstairs to our room. I went into my office so I was not in her way because of what was going through my head at this point, but also because I was trying to figure out who this man was who knew her. As I am pacing, I go to our bedroom. I can't get over this. I ask her again who this man was who knew her. She said she had no idea who that man was, so I told her to check the Facebook messages. I yelled at her and said, you do know who he is? I told her I would contact the detective and see if he had found anything else about the connection you and this guy you claim not to know. As I began to walk out the door, she stopped me. When I turned my head, when she stopped me, there was a knock at the door. I asked, who is it? He said, it's Detective Randall. I opened the door and greeted him. He then saw my wife and greeted her. He asked her if he could ask her a few questions. She replies, yes, of course. He says, I am sorry. I have to talk to you under these circumstances. He asked, can we sit down and chat? We both say, sure. He says bluntly, I am just going to come out and say it. The victim's wife said that you two were having an affair. When she found out about you two, she shot him. She denies it and says, I didn't have an affair with him. The detective says, ma'am, we have proof. I was shocked and disgusted at what I was hearing. Apparently, the victim's wife hired a private investigator to follow her husband for a while because he was acting strange. The investigator then told my wife that her number was all over the phone records and he had a video of her with the victim. She then drops her head and starts crying. The detective then says we had to make sure my wife wasn't a suspect and to check her alibi to make sure she didn't do it. A short time later, the detective leaves and says he will be in touch. She's still crying. I go up to her and ask, how long has she been cheating on me? She says, it started after the 6th year we were married. It turns out she was sleeping with men in almost every city she landed in. All I could muster out of my mouth was, oh my God. I asked her, how many people has she been with? She replied, she has been with a lot of men, but she wouldn't tell me. I continued to press her, but she wouldn't give me a number. I later found out it was over 44 plus men after a few years of our marriage. The detective called back a few weeks later and told me they found evidence from one guy who recorded their encounter without consent. At that moment, I knew this marriage was done. While she was working, she was cheating on me. I then told her we needed to talk about the assets and divorce because there was no coming back from this. She starts begging me not to leave her. I told her, you lied to me every time you got on that plane. I would have never known the extent of your cheating until a detective showed up at our door. How could you throw away 31 years? She says she is sorry for hurting me, even though she didn't mean to. At that point, I was done talking to her and didn't want to look at her anymore, so I packed a bag and left for a few days. After a couple of days, I went back home and my wife greeted me and said she wanted to tell me something. She confessed to everything, all the men. She even got pregnant by one guy, but secretly had an abortion. I was blown away. I asked her, "What did you hope to accomplish here today?" She says, "I don't want you to leave me." I said, "I don't think we can stay married to each other. Your actions were hideous. At this point, I have to deal with the assets. We have 3 homes, a 401k, and a stock portfolio. I am just too torn up. I can't write anymore." Update. My wife of 31 years, a flight attendant, has cheated with over 44 men. With an update. As you know, the detective came to my door and told me that a man was deceased and he knew my wife, and later finding out that the guy's wife shot him and told the detective that her husband was having an affair with my wife. After finding out all of this, my wife told me about the affair. I mean, all the affairs were too much for me to handle. I packed up my things and left, not knowing what to do. My wife, at least, had the decency to call me a few days later and apologize for everything she said or did or lied about. She also told me that it would never happen again because her heart only belongs to me. I simply told her I don't believe anything that comes out of her mouth. I told her I don't know when and if I am coming back home, maybe to pick up more things. I am still in disbelief about everything that has happened. I consulted with a lawyer about my options. He asked about my finances, and I said, fortunately, I had a separate account she didn't know about, but the house is in both of our names, and I told him I really didn't care about it. He asked, "Do you have any equity in the home?" I said, "Yes, we do." He said selling it might be a good option, but you will probably have to split the proceeds. He asked, "Do you have kids?" I said, "No, we don't." I told him I have a child from a previous relationship, but not with her. He says this shouldn't be too harsh of a divorce. There are no kids involved, and the only thing is a house. I tell him I need a few more days to process everything that has happened before I am ready to move forward. He said, "That's fine." In that time frame, she would have had to be with all 44 plus men on a weekly basis to do this. She was gone at least one night every other day or so, if not longer, and often asked me if I wanted dinner when she came home from her trips. So, this is where we are at. I have had a few days to process everything, and it just doesn't make sense how she could be with all these guys on the side. I'm not looking for revenge or anything like that. But what about the years of our marriage? What about being faithful to me, her husband of 31 plus years? And why would my wife, who was in love with me, cheat on me if she wasn't happy here? That means she has been cheating on me since the early 1990s. Every time I thought about it, the more disgusted I became, and the more I thought about it, the more divorce looked like the only option. After a few days, I called my soon-to-be ex-wife that I'm going to file for divorce. I am no longer referring to her as my wife. She says she loves me dearly and understands my decision. I told her, "I can't forgive you for what you have done." She says she has started counseling on her own. She then tells me she wants to try to save the marriage. That's why she started counseling on her own first. I told her, I don't believe that's going to help sway my decision. Now I have to go and see a doctor to get myself checked out because of what you did. I told her you were a whore, damn near our whole marriage. You are crazy to think I will touch you again. She started crying while I was yelling at her on the phone, and then I suddenly hung up. A week had passed, and I called the attorney and asked him when I could come in to start the divorce process. He tells me I can come in on Friday. I plan to pay whatever I need to pay to get this process started. In the meantime, I go back and forth to get more of my things and store them. My soon-to-be ex-wife isn't there. She is gone. Again, I reach out to my parents and tell them the horrible news. and asked them, can I stay with them until I get a place of my own? They said I could stay as long as I need. I told them I was staying in a hotel, and they asked why. I told them I was ashamed and didn't want anyone to know the situation. They were both upset at me for not reaching out to them when I was in a time of need. As Friday rolls around, I go to the lawyer's office and file the divorce papers. The soon-to-be ex-wife has not come back yet from her trip. She gets back and tells me that she was served with divorce papers the other night. To my surprise, she didn't even sound like she wanted to reconcile. All she said was, I will see you in court on such and such day. We hung up. I called the lawyer back, and he said I could come in to get a copy of the divorce papers. He also told me she was served at her home address on Saturday night, which I already knew. Interestingly, when I went to court for our hearing date, my wife had never shown up, which means she knew it would happen without opposition or other witnesses required. My divorce was now final by default as the days go by. After the divorce, I was home at my parents' place one day. There is a knock at my parents' door. It's the ex-wife. She wants to talk. I'm like, what is there to talk about? She gave a long speech that made sense with her head game, but I was in no mood for it right now and told her, never mind. After the divorce papers were finalized, we split the proceeds of the house, totaling $240,000. The only thing left on the home ownership agreement is that if she wants any of my furniture out of the house, she should give me a call so my parents and I can come pick it up. Later this week, she calls, and my parents and I go pick up the furniture from our house that was sold after my ex-wife came to my parents' place last week trying to talk to me. I never saw or heard from her again. A lot of our mutual friends were shocked at what they heard and never had any idea she was capable of cheating with so many men. A couple of months go by, and one of our mutual friends said she was having financial trouble and filed for bankruptcy. I was surprised to hear that, since she made out with $120,000 from the sale of our home. It turns out she was seeing a guy who ended up losing most of the money with a bad business venture. To top it off, she lost her job as a flight attendant because she was fooling around with one of the pilots. His wife found out, kept it hush-hush until she gathered evidence and found out the airline's chief executive officer, and he directed the airline to terminate them both. All I can say is, I am glad I am no longer married to her. I don't hold grudges, but it looks like at the end she fooled around with the wrong person's husband. I hope she gets the help she needs. The feds also indicted the guy she was seeing for participating in a Ponzi scheme. She gave him most of the money. She wasn't in any trouble, but the feds did question her about his business venture. To end this, she's in a very bad place now. I know I should be happy, but she has fallen. But I was married to her for 31 years. I don't wish her bad luck for the rest of her life. She has made some very bad decisions, and a decision that cost her dearly.